Hey everybody. Sorry you guys didn't get a video last week. We had some inclement weather, but you are going to get two conferences today for the price of one. So, Chris here from the Sonship Sports Channel. Welcome back to the ATG, All Things Gridiron. So, we had some nasty weather here in the Ozarks this past week where we had straight line winds of almost 80 miles an hour that snapped trees in half. I have two big ones down in my yard right now. Luckily, thank God, nobody was hurt. No damage to the house. Unfortunately, not everybody around here was as fortunate. So any prayers would be welcome. Then the next reason why I failed to post a video is Casey and I had technical difficulties. And by technical difficulties, I mean that I'm a doggone idiot when it comes to my editing software. So I am still working on that, and we will get that fine-tuned here by the start of the regular season. So this episode, I want to talk about the NFC East and the AFC North. We'll start with the NFC East, but there's something I also want to touch on. Is it just me, or are there an odd number of suspensions this year? Like a lot. I mean, I understand the gambling thing, but is the NFL going a little too far with some of this stuff? I mean, I understand the Alvin Kamara thing. I actually thought he was going to get more than 3 games, but I mean, we got Jamison Williams out for 6. We've got a lot of guys. I'm talking starters that are out for anywhere from 3 to 6 games. Now, obviously, earlier on, some people got suspended indefinitely, and then we got this weird thing with the running backs. All of a sudden, every running back in the NFL is holding out or asking for a new contract. Here's the problem for guys like Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs, even Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler. Where else are you going to go? Because all of these teams are doing the same thing. All of these teams are not paying their running backs what the running backs think that they're worth. Well, the market decides what they're worth, and right now, that market isn't being very kind to the workhorse backs. You do have some special ones in the NFL, like I mentioned, Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley. Actually, Aaron Jones in Green Bay got the bag, so I think they're all looking at that like, hey, why can't I? Well, I just answered the question, because Aaron Jones was a 5th-round draft pick out of UTEP. He was not on the top of anyone's radar, and now he's one of the best backs in the league. So when all NFL teams think that these guys are a dime a dozen, it makes it very difficult for them to get paid like wide receivers and left tackles and things like that. So anyway, moving right along, we're going to start with the NFC East. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to say Casey and I were different on this. Casey thinks the Philadelphia Eagles are going to repeat in this division, and that's a safe pick. I think they're going to suffer from a little bit of Super Bowl hangover like the loser of the Super Bowl normally does. I think Jalen Hurts is going to take a little bit of a step back this year. He lost his quarterback whisperer. Shane Steichen went to Indianapolis and is doing great things with Anthony Richardson. Richardson's having an excellent camp right now. For those of you who think that losing a quarterback whisperer isn't a big thing, I give you Daniel Jones. No, he didn't lose one. He gained one, Brian Daboll. Daniel Jones was supposed to lose his job and ended up getting a contract for $40 million a year. I mean, where the hell did that come from? Well, it came from Brian Daboll. Cleaned up his fundamentals, got him playing like an NFL caliber quarterback. Who, by the way, at the end of last year kind of tailed off a little bit. His numbers were still good because he's a great quarterback, but they weren't everything you'd expect. Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Brian Daboll's old quarterback. When Daboll was with Buffalo, he's the one who cleaned up Josh Allen and got Josh Allen playing the way that Josh Allen plays. So I think Philly's going to take a step back this year. Casey thinks that they're going to stay where they're at. My top of the division, and this is a big shout out to my buddy Eric, the Z-Man, I think the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to be the number 1 team in that division. I think Philly's a close second, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up flipping around. Not at all. Philadelphia is the defending NFC champion. So would I be surprised if Philly ends up beating out Dallas? No. But I am going to favor Dallas right now, and here's why. Mike McCarthy's fighting for his job. Then you have Dan Quinn on the defensive side of the ball, who probably should be a head coach again based on everything he's done with that Dallas defense. Speaking of that Dallas defense, where's the weak point? Where is the weak point on that Dallas defense? DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons make up one of the best pass rushing tandems in the NFL. It could be the best. I mean, you got Cleveland out there with Zadarius Smith and of course Myles Garrett, and Green Bay has Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary, and there's several other dynamic pass rushing tandems in the NFL. Max Crosby and Chandler Jones out in Vegas. But this one with DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons might be the best. You can at least make the argument. And now you add the rookie Mazi Smith out of Michigan. That takes a scary front line and makes it a lethal one. Middle of the field, largely patrolled by Leighton Vander Esch, who the last couple of seasons has had a nice resurgence of his career. There was some talk a couple years ago that he might be out of Dallas, and all of a sudden he's come on and played well. He has to stay healthy, but when Vander Esch is healthy, he's a boss on that field. He's a very good middle linebacker. The secondary, again, I ask you, where's the weak spot on this defense? Because it's not Gilmore and Diggs and Hooker and Wilson, that's for sure. That's almost as good a secondary as there is in the NFL. You add that to the pass rush of the Cowboys, they're going to terrorize people on defense. And that's what Dan Quinn defenses do. Remember the Legion of Boom? That's what he's trying to remake here in Dallas. Offensive side of the ball, again, where's the weak spot? Now, I know what everybody's going to say. It's Dak. Because when the bright lights shine, Dak seems to kind of turtle up. Well, that's a fair argument. I'm not going to argue with anybody there. Dak has had his moments in big games that make you kind of scratch your head. But he's also shown that he can play extremely well, too. He can play at a high level. Dak has had some really nice games. Tony Pollard, the argument between Tony and Zeke, well, that adds into what I said at the beginning about the running back thing. Zeke is one of the running backs that, along with guys like Todd Gurley, that has scared the hell out of these NFL owners and general managers. And now Zeke's not with the Cowboys anymore. Pollard is just playing better than he is. The weapons, you've got a legitimate group of weapons in your receiving room. You got the superstar with CeeDee Lamb. Then you got some really nice complementary pieces like Gallup, and then they brought in Brandon Cooks. Tight end is an interesting one. Jake Ferguson's not going to jump off the page at anybody, but I don't think Jake Ferguson is going to stay the starter very long. I think Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan, he's a second-round draft pick. You don't draft a tight end in the second round and expect him to just be a complementary piece. I think Luke could be the steal of the tight end class. Played some good football for Michigan, had some injury problems, but he can move. He can catch the ball. He can block. 6'5", 250 pounds, built exactly like you want a tight end built. He can run good routes. He has good hands. I think that Luke Schoonmaker is going to be the starting tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, probably sooner rather than later. You got the Smith brothers guarding the left side of that offensive line, Zach Martin at right guard. Solid offensive line. Cowboys almost always have a solid offensive line. It's going to come down to Dak. And I think Dak is going to play good enough this year to where Dallas is going to be the team to beat in the East. Now, Philadelphia, I really can't take anything away from them. They had a great draft, added guys like Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. Still have zero idea how both of those guys felt Philadelphia. Talk about the rich getting richer. Philadelphia's got a great offensive line. They got great weapons as well. Dallas Goedert, there is no question mark in their tight end room. Running back, DeAndre Swift, they got everybody else from Georgia, so why the hell not? I don't think they have the best running back room in this division, but I don't think they need to because of Jalen Hurts. Defensively, they're as stacked as anybody. Slay and Bradbury at the corners, Edmonds and Blankenship at the safeties. Hassan Reddick, he's one of those guys, almost like Parsons. He can play any position. He can play every linebacker position, and he can be your best pass rusher. And then they go out and draft Nolan Smith to basically play the same position. I mean, they can just throw people at you. They still have Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett. They can get after you in a whole lot of ways, not to mention the big boys in the middle, Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, and Jordan Davis. They have a very deep team. I just think that it's going to be more difficult. People are going to be gunning for them. They're going to have a difficult schedule based on obviously being the Super Bowl runner-up. And like I said, Jalen Hurts did lose his quarterback whisperer. My next team is the New York Giants. Now, Casey actually had the Giants number 2 behind Philadelphia because Casey thinks the Cowboys is going to be the Cowboys. Like I said, the New York Giants, I think, are going to do well. They're in a very stacked division, though. I think the NFC East is going to have 3 teams coming out of it. I think the New York Giants, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Dallas Cowboys all make the playoffs because the NFC is much weaker than the AFC. I like New York's offense. The pickup of Darren Waller, I think, is huge because a good tight end is a quarterback's best friend when he's in trouble, and Darren Waller is one of the best pass-catching tight ends in the game. Saquon Barkley agreeing to terms was huge because that's going to make that play action deadly for Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones, much like the aforementioned Jalen Hurts, kid's got some wheels. He can move. He'll be able to kill you with his legs as much as he can with his arm. Some solid players on the offensive line. Andrew Thomas, obviously, first-round draft pick from 2020 at the left tackle. They just went out and drafted Sir Michael Schmitz Jr. in the second round to take care of that center position. Glowinski at right guard, Evan Neal at right tackle. It's not an offensive line that's going to blow you away with a ton of Pro Bowlers, but these are good players. I don't think the offensive line is going to cause the New York Giants to lose a ton of games. Now, defensively, I like New York's defensive line, the big uglies up front. Not the pass rushers as much, although they're okay, but not great at the pass rusher position. They got Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau. Thibodeau, obviously the first-round draft pick from last year. But besides him, I think he's going to get a lot of double teams because they just don't have that other guy that I think is going to strike fear into the hearts of anybody. Now, it could be Ojulari. Azeez Ojulari, the second-round draft pick from 2021, he could step up. They need him to step up. Bobby Okereke, that played for the Colts, and Micah McFadden at the linebackers. Not overly thrilled with their linebacker room. I think it's probably the weakest inside linebacker room or roving linebacker room in this division. But I do like their front 3. Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence II, and Ashawn Robinson. They're going to make it difficult for people to run on New York, which should help out the back 8 of that team. When it comes to the secondary, I also believe that's where New York struggles. They've got right off the bat, it looks like they're going to have a couple of rookies in there starting at the cornerback positions with Deonte Banks and Trey Hawkins. Trey Hawkins is a 6th-round draft pick. So it'll be interesting to see how he holds up. You also have a Dory Jackson in there that's slotted to play their nickel. McCain and McKinney at safety. Okay, but nothing to get excited about. So I think the Giants are going to finish 3rd in this division. Largely because I really, really like Brian Daboll. I think Brian Daboll is an excellent coach, and New York is not going to lose because of stupid mistakes. Brian Daboll is going to have them playing disciplined football. So even if they don't have the star power that the rest of this division has, especially the top two teams, they're going to play good fundamental football. Last but not least, the Washington Commanders. I do think Washington is going to take a step forward this year. A lot of it, though, is going to depend on the arm of Sam Howell. Watched a lot of Sam Howell in college when he played for North Carolina. Sam Howell had a great college career. We'll see if he can translate that into the pros. He's a fifth-round draft pick, but we've seen quarterbacks drafted lower than fifth round turn out to be pretty good. Certain guy from Michigan comes to mind. Anyway, one of the best-kept secrets in the entire NFL is Terry McLaurin. I mean, you might be saying, well, Chris, I know who Terry McLaurin is. Yeah, but if he had Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, you name them, if you had one of those quarterbacks throwing to Terry McLaurin, I think you'd be talking about Terry McLaurin in that top 2 or 3, like you mentioned, Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams and things like that. I think he would be mentioned with those guys. Running back room, nothing spectacular. Offensive line, the same. I don't think that. I think Washington offensively is the worst team in this division. I think the only position that I think they're better at than anyone is the wide receiver position. I think they've got probably better skill position pass catchers than the New York Giants. But every other position group on offense, from quarterback to running back to offensive line, I think they're last in the division. Now, as far as defense goes, I think they're probably, I don't think they're quite as good as Dallas, but I think they're close to being tied with Philly. And that's just my personal opinion. There's people out here listening to this going, well, Philly's got a better defense than the Cowboys. I think Dallas is going to have a special year defensively this year. But anyway, Washington might have the best front four in football. I mean, when you look at Young and Sweat at the ends and Payne and Allen at D tackles, not only is there not a weak spot there, every single one of those guys I named is obviously Pro Bowl caliber. I mean, they're more than good. These are great players. So that front four for Washington can be devastating for opposing quarterbacks. The linebacker room, Cody Barton, Jamin Davis, again, pretty good. Nothing to get too excited about. And then the secondary, much the same. I like Emmanuel Forbes, their first-round draft pick. I think Emmanuel Forbes is going to surprise a lot of people, and he's going to be one of the best defensive rookies this year. Kendall Fuller obviously plays pretty well, but he's not a household name. And you got Forrest and Curl at the safety positions. I think Washington will improve this year. I just look at the rest of their division and say, God, they got to play all 3 of those other teams twice this year. The Cowboys twice, the Giants twice, the defending NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles twice. That's going to make it very, very difficult for them to compile enough victories to make the playoffs. But I think that outside of their division, they could make some noise. So that, folks, is my NFC East breakdown. And just to be fair to Casey out there, like I said, he went with Philadelphia first, New York Giants second, Dallas third, and Washington last. And he only thinks 2 teams are going to make the playoffs from this division. So obviously he thinks the Cowboys are out in the cold because he just thinks Dak is going to be Dak. And he thinks that Daniel Jones and the Giants and Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles are going to the playoffs. Now, that brings us to the AFC North. Casey and I didn't have a whole lot of disagreement here. It's really difficult to look at any other team besides the Cincinnati Bengals and with a straight face say that someone else other than Cincy shouldn't be favored to win that division. Injuries aside, Cincinnati has done what they needed to do to shore up the offensive line with Orlando Brown at left tackle, and you got Alex Kappa at right guard now, and Jonah Williams at right tackle, Ted Karras at center. So, I mean, they went out and picked up some dudes, not just guys off the street. They went out and picked up some dudes. When you got Joe Burrow, who's going to be the richest quarterback in the league in about 5 minutes, you need to protect him. And oh, by the way, he's got a really nice guy, nice tailback behind him in that offensive backfield. Joe Mixon, outstanding running back. And then he's got the triplets, the modern day triplets, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd, in my opinion, is sounds strange to say it like this, least talented of the three. And Tyler Boyd could be a number one on a lot of teams. That's how good this receiving core is. And then they went out and drafted a couple more rookies too. So they're young because Chase and Higgins are kids themselves. Tyler Boyd's been around since 2016, but that's only 7 years in the league. So he's still under 30 himself. Irv Smith Jr., tight end from the Minnesota Vikings. He's very serviceable, but I don't think you're going to need him a whole lot considering the firepower they have at the receiver position. I mean, this is going to be a track meet. It's going to be difficult to hold Cincinnati under 35, 40 points. I don't care who they're playing. So it's going to be really difficult to choose any other team besides them in the AFC North. Defensively, I like Cincy too. Defensively, I think defensively they're second only to the Pittsburgh Steelers in this division. I like Sam Hubbard. I like Trey Hendrickson. They drafted Miles Murphy in the first round out of Clemson. He's going to be an enormous piece to that pass rushing rotation. DJ Reader is one of the best D tackles in football. Period. End of discussion. DJ Reader. BJ Hill's pretty good, but he's not DJ Reader. DJ Reader can be a game wrecker. Wilson and Pratt. Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, a couple of really nice linebackers. Again, not the most household name guys, but these are real blue-collar dudes. These are blue-collar guys that just go in there and they make a lot of tackles. Secondary, not thrilled with Cincinnati's secondary. Awuzie, Taylor Britt. I do like Mike Hilton, the nickelback that they got from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's probably the most talented of their cornerback group. And then you got Nick Scott and Dax Hill at the safeties. I think Dax Hill could take a huge leap this year. He was their first round pick from last year. And that's what Cincinnati's expecting. They need some of these guys to step up. And then they drafted Jordan Battle in the third round of this year out of Alabama. Jordan Battle played really good football for the Crimson Tide. So I think that eventually you're probably going to see Dax Hill and Jordan Battle sharing that safety room, and that may elevate that secondary. And that may happen as early as this year. So if that secondary it's not that the secondary is untalented. I think it's unproven. So if guys like Hill and Battle can step up, and then you have Taylor Britt, who was their second round draft pick last year at corner, I think it has potential. I really do. My second and third place teams, I hate to do this to you guys. This is such a cop-out. I'm going to call it a tie. I just can't decide between Baltimore and Cleveland. My smart money says I want to go with Baltimore because John Harbaugh is such a good coach. Lamar Jackson seems like he's going to be dedicated now that he got the bag. OBJ, they added him. Zay Flowers in the draft. They still got Bateman and Duvernay. And they have probably the most talented yet unheralded tight end in the NFL in Mark Andrews. If Mark Andrews had Mahomes throwing him the ball, he would have equal stats to Travis Kelce. I don't care what anybody says. I think Mark Andrews is one of the, I'm going to say it, he's one of the top 3 tight ends in the NFL. I think you'd have to put Mark Andrews above Darren Waller right now. I think it's probably Kelce, George Kittle, and Mark Andrews right now would be my top 3 tight ends in the NFL. Lamar Jackson is going to have the weapons to play with in Baltimore. Still has a pretty good offensive line. Big Ronnie Stanley, left tackle. He can stay healthy. He's an outstanding left tackle. So I think that They've got some nice pieces there. Of course, they got Linderbaum, the center, who was their first-round draft pick last year. Zeitler and Moses. They've got some good guys on the offensive line. I just offensively, from an overall standpoint, they're not as good as Cincinnati though. I want to see what Lamar looks like after being gone as long as he has been, and depends on how good Deshaun Watson is this year. And we'll get into that here in a minute once I get through with Baltimore. Here's what's weird to say about Baltimore. I think the strength of this team this year is their offense. Now, J.K. Dobbins, as it is now a state law in Maryland, apparently, J.K. Dobbins has started out the season on the physically unable to perform list for the 437th season in a row. So it's like a thing. He has to. So if J.K. Dobbins can get going this year, he would be a nice complementary piece to their best running back, which is Lamar Jackson. However, Lamar Jackson can throw the ball as well. I don't know what he's going to look like after being out as long as he has been, but we'll see. Defensively, Baltimore, oddly enough, I think has the worst defense in this division. They definitely, in my opinion, have the worst edge rushers. Linebacker and secondary, I think, are pretty good, but their front five, I should say, because they play a 3-4, so they're three big uglies, largely led by nose tackle Michael Pierce, and their pass rushers, Owe and Tyus Bowser. They don't strike fear into anybody's heart. Now, here's the odd thing, though. Do you really think a Baltimore Ravens team is going to play bad defense? It just seems like it's so well coached. I just don't know a lot of these guys. They're not what I would call household names, and I don't see Baltimore's front five causing enough havoc. Now, I do love their inside backers. Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith, they're tackling machines, both of them. But they are going to be having to fight off offensive linemen a bunch because, like I said, I don't think the front big uglies of this team are very solid. Now, Marlon Humphrey is an outstanding cornerback, but beyond that, you got question marks. Rock Ya-Sin, is he going to be that complementary piece? He's now been in 2 or 3 different places. Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton that's a nice safety tandem. I'm not going to take anything away from those guys. I think that is definitely a nice safety tandem. Now, I think the best player on this team, without a doubt, kicker Justin Tucker. Now, I know he's probably not the best athlete on the team, but as far as being the best kicker in the NFL, I don't think it's really close right now. I mean, you get it inside of 60, he's going to hit it. And 60 to 65, I'm just going to flip a coin. And 50% of the time, he's going to hit that too. So Tucker is just automatic at this point, and that's what may vault them ahead of the Browns, unless Deshaun Watson is the Deshaun Watson from Houston. And that right now, my friends, is what a lot of people are saying. If you watch any of the training camp highlights, if you read any of the reports coming out of Cleveland, Deshaun Watson, now that he's had a full off season and has immersed himself in Kevin Stefanski's offense, he's got Alex Van Pelt as his offensive coordinator. They've been working with him, and he has got the offense down. I think he is a better passer than Lamar Jackson. He may not be as good of a runner, but I don't think he needs to take a backseat to anybody when it comes to athleticism. Dabo Swinney once described him as the Michael Jordan of football. And when he's on, it's difficult to argue with that. I mean, there was a lot of years there in Houston where it was like J.J. Watt and Brian Cushing on the defensive side of the ball, and then you had Deshaun Watson on the offense, and he just basically carried that team on his back. Deshaun Watson can be a one-man show. The scary thing is in Cleveland, he doesn't have to be. Much like I talked about the Cowboys earlier, where's the weak spot? I mean, Deshaun Watson's the question mark. But if Deshaun Watson is the Deshaun Watson of Houston, not only could Cleveland be better than Baltimore, Cleveland might be able to challenge for a division title. And before you say I'm crazy, again, tell me where the weak spot is. Offensive line, I don't know. Could it be the best one in football? Willis, Bitonio, Pochik, Teller, and Conklin? Those guys are all well above average for their specific positions. I mean, they're excellent at all 5 spots. David Njoku at tight end. Jordan Akins is his backup. Probably the best running back in football, Nick Chubb. Amari Cooper, Peoples-Jones, Marquise Goodwin, Jakeem Grant. And oh, by the way, they went out and got a really nice slot receiver in Elijah Moore from the New York Jets in a nice trade that they made. So the offense is loaded, as long as Deshaun is the Deshaun that we all know and love from Houston. Defensive side of the ball, that may actually be their strength. They went out and got Zadarius Smith. Now, Zadarius Smith is over 30 years old, and he's had some injury issues. But when he was playing for Green Bay for those few seasons, Zadarius Smith was one of the best outside linebacker pass rushers in football. And he plays the run very well, too. Now you pair him with Myles Garrett. Guess what, guys? No more double teaming Myles Garrett because you got Zadarius on the other side of the field or the other side of that line. That's going to make Myles Garrett that much more lethal. And let me tell you something. We don't need Myles Garrett to be any more lethal than he is. He's already a quarterback killer. Dalvin Tomlinson in the middle, Jordan Elliott, J.O.K. out of Notre Dame at linebacker, Anthony Walker, former Indianapolis Colt. That is a really good linebacking pair up right there. Sion Takataki, third-round draft pick from 2019. I don't think he's quite as good as the other two, but he's no slouch either at the strong side. Defensive backfield, Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, and Greg Newsome. It's difficult to find a better 3. That's going to be a solid cornerback room. And then with Thornhill that they picked up from Kansas City and Grant Delpit, again, where is the weakness? Now, they don't have Justin Tucker. They have Cade York. So we'll see how that turns out. But if Deshaun Watson is the old Deshaun Watson, this is a playoff team and probably not a one-and-done playoff team. So the rest of the AFC right now is praying that Deshaun isn't the old Deshaun. Like the AFC needs another juggernaut quarterback. It's getting ridiculous how lopsided the AFC and the NFC is. To put that in perspective, I talked about the Eagles and the Cowboys. In my rankings, I have the Eagles and the Cowboys making the playoffs. I also have the San Francisco 49ers making the playoffs. But those are the only 3 teams that are in that mix with the AFC team. I think the worst AFC playoff team, whether that's going to be Jacksonville, maybe the Jets, whoever has that 7th seed, I think that team is better than probably 3 or 4 of the teams that are going to make the playoffs out of the NFC. You're going to have wild card teams in the AFC that I believe are going to be head and shoulders better than some of the division winners in the NFC. Whoever comes out of that, the NFC South, possibly even the NFC North, could be lagging far behind this AFC field. It's just incredible. And Cleveland could be a big part of that. So moving on to my last place team. And again, it's funny to say this because I think that they're vastly improved. But much like the NFC East, this AFC North division is loaded. I think, last year with Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin, this was a horrible year for Mike Tomlin because it was the first time he didn't have a winning record. Or maybe did they turn out 9-8, 8-9? Anyway, by far the worst season Mike Tomlin has had with Pittsburgh. And they're young. They had a brutal offensive line. There is no doubt about that. They had to go out and get some pieces to help with that. They invaded Philadelphia. Siumalo is now their left guard. That's going to help out. They're hoping that the 4th round draft pick Dan Moore from 2021 is the answer at left tackle. Mason Cole at center, James Daniels at right guard. So again, that could be the difficulty for this Pittsburgh Steelers team is the offensive line. But I do believe the running back room is just fine. I like Najee Harris a lot. I think Najee Harris is an excellent running back. I like Pat Freiermuth a lot at tight end as well. And with an up-and-coming quarterback like Kenny Pickett, I think Kenny Pickett is literally built to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he played his entire college career in this stadium, so he's a hometown boy. They love him, and I think Pickett's going to improve over last year. And actually, as I said before, with Daniel Jones and Darren Waller, having that nice tight end to dump the ball off to is a great help. Wide receiver weapons depends on what Allen Robinson you're getting, because we've seen about 3 or 4 of them now in the NFL. I'd like to think he's going to be the 1,000-yard receiving Allen Robinson, but I don't know. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, nice receivers, really nice receivers. Just nobody flies off the page as a Justin Jefferson type. So Pickett doesn't have that. I think with a suspect offensive line and a really good running back, you want to lean on the running game more to set up the pass here. One thing that I think is going to keep Pittsburgh in a lot of games is the defense. I think Pittsburgh has the best defense in the AFC North. And that's saying a lot because the Browns, I think, are loaded. Cincinnati is loaded. But I think Pittsburgh overall, we talked about pass rushing tandems. TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. How did I forget that earlier? Alex Highsmith just got the bag himself. Ton of money. And he's not even the best pass rusher on this team, not even close. He's a great pass rusher, but TJ Watt may be the best pass rusher in football when he's healthy. They bring a lot of heat in Pittsburgh. I think their defensive tackle room, their big uglies are nice with Cameron Hayward and Keanu Benton, the rookie 2nd-round draft pick out of Wisconsin. I think he's going to come in with all 310 pounds of him, and he's going to make some noise right off the bat. Middle linebacker, not crazy about. Landon Roberts and Cole Holcomb. Nice backers, not great. But I do like the secondary as well. Levi Wallace, Patrick Peterson, Chandon Sullivan, the longtime Green Bay Packer. And then you got some nice safeties there. Minkah Fitzpatrick, obviously the star of the group, but DeMonte Kazee and Keanu Neal will also be playing a lot of minutes there. I think that they all together, largely because of the front three and their pass rush and the nice secondary that they have, I think that Pittsburgh is defensively a shade better than Cincinnati and Cleveland, and I think they're way ahead of Baltimore. But Pittsburgh is going to be my last place team. I do not think Pittsburgh makes the playoffs, but I do believe, just like in the NFC East with Dallas, Philadelphia, and New York, I think there are 3 teams that make the playoffs here. I think the Baltimore Ravens, Cleveland Browns, and obviously the Cincinnati Bengals, who is my top team, I think they're all going to make the playoffs. So you're going to have 3 teams out of the AFC North, largely because I think the AFC South is only going to have 1, and it's going to be really the AFC East and the AFC West. Those teams are going to beat each other up so much, you may only get 1 team out of there. if you look at the AFC West, or I'm sorry, the AFC East and who they have to play, first of all, every team in the Bills and Jets division have to play each other twice that year. And then I believe they have to play it's the NFC East and I believe the AFC North, who we're talking about. And those two divisions, it's just going to be brutal as far as scheduling for those teams. So I do think that there's going to be three teams that come out of the North, and Cincinnati's going to be the class of that AFC North. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share, comment. How could I forget? Casey, he pretty much had the same thing I did, except he had Pittsburgh above Baltimore. And that's fair. I think the other three teams besides Cincinnati, you could make an argument for any of them to finish in any of the other spots. So a lot of it's going to depend on injuries and how are Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson and Kenny Pickett performing. Will Kenny Pickett take the next big step? But yes, definitely, I would put my money on Cincinnati for the division. So, folks, a wonderful, wonderful time getting back with you. Again, I'm sorry for the delay, but hopefully this was enough of a football stuffed burrito episode so you guys can munch on that, and we will see you next time.